And welcome one and all to our Wednesday evening look at the end times. Looking at, let's see here, let me share this screen for the moment. We are looking at Revelation and the Dragon's Prophecy, courtesy of Messianic Jewish Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. So we'll be in the book of Deuteronomy for our first scripture, but a few adventurous things to share before we do that. So before we get to Deuteronomy, let's see, what do I want to share first? Let's do this. So here's an announcement for everyone.
But your name shall be Abraham. I also antagonized a lot of people by recognizing the state of Israel as soon as it was formed.
Whereas you try to do the Bible, you said you held up the Bible. You said, here's the title. You don't lose your right to your own because somebody kicked out you out. That Torah came before the land. It's no accident.
Patterns of Evidence Foundation presents
The covenants are what holds the storyline together.
a film that asks if God made a covenant with the children of Israel.
God's covenants are everlasting. There will be other things disappearing from the natural cosmos before I break my covenant. I will never break my covenant. The God of Israel cares about all human beings, and therefore the caring for Israel is expressing his love and concern for all humanity.
What evidence remains today?
So David is part of the history of Israel, which has been alive for some time because there was not solid archaeological evidence. That's all changed in the last decade.
Debate rages over the truth of biblical prophecy.
They connect all these tradition stories, myths, theological stories, and so on. We are dealing with traditions.
The scriptures predict events hundreds, sometimes thousands of years off into the future, and they do so with a reliability that is breathtaking.
What will the pattern reveal?
If they break the covenant, there are consequences.
That's right.
Before you get out of the Pentateuch, the whole basic plot line is given.
Patterns of Evidence, the Israel Dilemma.
So yes, that is a church field trip I would love to take if it's showing here. Unfortunately, Galaxy Theater in Tehachapi has of late not been showing Fathom events and the like. So, I said Tehachapi? Yeah, I sure did. Yeah, it's a long drive. They don't even have a Galaxy Theater yet. But so here in Tulare, yes, it's a problem when you live in two cities that begin with T. Yes, 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 yes.
It's as they do come out on streaming kind of quickly.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
I might even go see that one.
You know it's something wet. So very timely with our look that we've just taken these last few Wednesdays, going through the Pentateuch, the first 5 books in the Bible, and now we're in Deuteronomy. I'm setting the stage for basically our theme over this class as we took a pause in Revelation chapter 6, and we're doing kind of a swoop back, and then we're going to continue from Revelation 6 forward when we're all said and done here. But we're looping in some of this stuff to bring out these themes. Israel, the church, and the spirit of Antichrist are pretty much the themes we're going to see. How we got to where we are today. We saw in Revelation 6 how the colors of the 4 horsemen match the 4 colors of the Palestinian flag. And so we're seeing, okay, we see the state of Israel and the Palestinians and all, so-called and all of that stuff going on right now. How did we get here? So those are the themes we're going to be tracing back to bring us back to Revelation 6 and going forward. So before we do that, let's see here. Our friend Israel My Channel has a new update. I'm just going to show the first like 60 seconds of this and then the last like 5 minutes because this will really tie into end times here. So here's the latest and greatest out of Israel.
Guys, we are entering a new phase of the war because last night Damascus in Syria was struck by the Israeli army. Another phase of the war is opening. Now, what should we care and what's coming next? Well, I'll tell you right after we sum up this week's events. Shalom, guys, and welcome to another update on the situation in Israel. So it was a very busy week for the Israeli army, as the military was striking a lot of the Hezbollah targets within Lebanon, especially in Beirut. It seems right now the most unpopular job you can have in Lebanon is to be the leader of Hezbollah, because every time a new leader is chosen, he is eliminated by Israel. So right now we have this guy who is like a spokesman, I guess, for the Hezbollah, because he doesn't want to be a leader, because he's afraid he's going to die. That's how difficult it is to be the Hezbollah leader these days. Anyway,
Okay, so there, I couldn't pass that up. I have to say that. Hey there. So now we'll fast forward through most of this and take you to right here, dealing with the latest that has just happened and how it relates to the Bible and end times.
and
Right after this word from our sponsor.
They came up to buy a home and a few rental properties. They were
to the cream de la cream, as my French buddy would say. So the Israeli strikes in Syria, because this is very serious. So the Israeli strikes in Syria, not just the one in Damascus, are very, very important strategically. If we're talking about a bigger war, Israel against Iran, and maybe somebody even more powerful. So you know the expression under the radar? Well, this is exactly what is happening in Syria. Israel is quietly starting to strike radars in Syria. Now, this is very important if we look at this map from a bigger distance. So Israel's reach of Iran goes to Syria. And you know, Syria is a weak country. It still did not recover after years of wars, of conflict between different factions that are constantly fighting with each other. You know, ISIS and all of that. This happened in Syria. So Syria is a weak country. It doesn't have a unified government. And that's why you can take out a lot of the infrastructure, military infrastructure in Syria. Between Iran and Syria,
I'm going to pause right here. So you see Mosul right up here. That's ancient Nineveh, capital of Assyria. We've been talking about Assyria a bit lately. So this is the area we're talking about here.
there's one more country, that's Iraq. And what is interesting is that the part which borders to the north with Iran is controlled by the Kurdish. And you know, the Kurds have their own problems. They are fighting for their own country, which will probably not happen. They have a big problem with Turkey and then with Iraq also. So everybody wants to, you know, basically kill them. So they may allow the Israeli forces to pass through their territory to Iran. And you know, that would look very promising for Israel, if not for one problem, the big elephant in the room. So that's Russia. And since Barack Obama led Russia into Syria, this is a big problem.
Pause right here. Legend up here. So of course the US forces have the American flags here. The Russian forces have these flags, these circles here. So those are all Russian forces and these are all American forces, to give you an idea.
For Israel, because Russia has those really nice S-40 rockets, which can cause problems for the Israeli planes on their way to Iran. And Russia is not recently a friend of Israel, especially after Israel sent those warning systems against rockets to Ukraine. And you know, some of the radars that Israel hit recently were very close to the Russian bases. So now you can understand, like, everybody is in this place. America, Russia, Israel, Iran, everybody is involved. And when it's going to erupt, well, it's going to be a big, big war. And Israel is balancing now on ice. I mean, it wants to retaliate against Iran, but Russia is in the way. So I mean, if we look at Bible prophecies, this is like the clock, this is like the moment that's written in the Bible, in Ezekiel, of the great conflict of the powers coming from the north. And what is north of Israel? The most remote place from Jerusalem to the north, it's Moscow. So guys, fasten your seatbelts because it's gonna get really, really fast. I mean, we need to pray and be close to God right now because things are gonna happen. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for everybody who's supporting the channel. This is really, really helpful. I appreciate that a lot. If you would like to support the channel, if you like that kind of updates, I will keep you updated and let you know what is happening. I wish you a peaceful night, peaceful day, whatever time of day it is right now. Shalom.
That was posted just a few hours ago. Let's see.
I'm Eugene Goodman.
I'm happy for
I'm
you.
a Democrat.
I'm sorry. I was happy for you. Let's see. Now, sounds like a good time to be getting together and praying, right? So if you're not able to make it to Clovis, but you might be able to make it to Washington, D.C. this Saturday.
This is Jonathan Todd, and I'm doing this on my telephone. I'm doing this in my office because I want to get the word out as quickly as possible to you with a special announcement. We are standing at the most critical moment in our nation's history, at a crossroads of life or death. In less than a month, there's going to be an election that's going to determine America's future. And without revival, America is lost. So there's going to be a prophetic event, a gathering at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And it's going to happen on the holiest day of the Bible, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur is the day that God gave for prayer and fasting and intercession and repentance and cleansing, redemption, and for a nation to turn its course, to turn away from sin, to turn away from evil, and to turn to God. That is what this is going to be. And maybe the largest Yom Kippur event, gathering, observance in history. And it's going to be exactly that, to pray and intercede for the future of America, for the election, for the world, for revival, for the peace of Jerusalem, Israel, the end times, everything, but focused on the future of our nation. It has been called the Esther Gathering, or the Million Women's Event. And the focus is on women rising up as Esthers, but men are also going to be part as Mordecai's. As Esther came to her time, her place, when her nation was in danger of calamity, so too, you're here today, you're alive today, you are at a momentous, critical time in America's history, where a nation now is in danger. And the thing is, yet she, Esther, with Mordecai, they were used by God to change the course of their nation and bring redemption. Well, that's what it's about. It's being led by a great, passionate man of God, Lou Engle, and they're.
Okay, so I'll stop there. So Jonathan Kahn will be kicking the event off this Saturday. So if you can't make Clovis, but can somehow make DC, there you go. So with all of that action-packed, adventurous stuff, reactions, thoughts, comments, questions on just this little bit here.
Well, I was wondering why Israel had taken out the new, Iran and they're fighting Russia. And of course, Biden is telling them, no, don't, for his interest in Iran. But if we don't hold out the 30 days, I think all bets are off. Because Russia's not going to, with Trump in office, I don't think Russia will do it.
Wise words. So just for a little perspective here. Not yet in relation to this. Yeah, but keep in mind, as was mentioned, their involvement in Syria. So here's Jerusalem. What's straight north there, pretty much? Moscow. Now, let's talk end times and Bible and stuff. Then we'll get to Deuteronomy. So one of the names that's thrown out there in relation to some of these is Meshesh. And there's thought that Meshesh is a variation of Moscow, or Moscow is a later version of Meshesh, so that there might be a biblical tie-in there. Also, lots of times we talk about patterns in the Bible. Well, there have been types of the Antichrist before today. The spirit of Antichrist has been in the work for the world. There have been individuals who have, like Bible prophecy often happens, sometimes there's an immediate fulfillment that's a partial, which is to be a sign and a shadow of the later fulfillment that will be a more full fulfillment. This happened with the Antichrist. This happened in between the Old and New Testaments, and it was predicted in the book of Daniel. And so when Alexander the Great's kingdom split into four, divided amongst his four generals after he died at 33 years old, there were the Ptolemies in the south with Egypt, and there are the Seleucids up further north with Syria and all that stuff. Well, a guy who came in and defiled Jerusalem and the altar and the temple, King Antiochus Epiphanes IV, he was from Syria. He was a king of the north. And so Daniel 11 talks a lot about kings of the north and kings of the south, intermarriage there. The whole Maccabee revolt, from which we get Hanukkah, that Jesus celebrated in John chapter 10, was the Maccabees revolting against this guy, this type of Antichrist, and overcoming and being able to restore and cleanse the temple. And Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, is the dedication of the temple after it was cleansed. And so this guy, king of the north, was a type of the Antichrist, but that's just it. He was from the north. Daniel talks about the little horn and how he's going to be basically a king of the north. So it's often recognized by many that whoever the later fulfillment of the ultimate Antichrist is, that he will be a human being, a man who is from the north, like the king, like Syria. And so we see that as of a few hours ago, Syria is now drawn into this conflict with Israel. And with Russia, Meshesh right there above them. So just adding a little more fuel to the fire of modern times and the events there. So makes sense, and everyone kind of see all that flowing. And his brother Rick Howard, pastor of Modesto Church, is fond of saying, so are things falling apart or falling together? The answer is yes. Oh, yeah. Benjamin Netanyahu.
There is the final word.
Yes.
You know, because he's saying, they're saying ceasefire, they're saying you have to move out. And he's standing his ground. He's like, no, we're not.
Right.
And good for him.
That's right. So you're absolutely right. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he is like, he's human like anyone else, but he, just as we had Reagan and England had Margaret Thatcher, and we had, Pope John Paul II, and England had Churchill before Thatcher, Benjamin Netanyahu is that for the nation of Israel. Hated by some in home because he doesn't play their games, but he is doing what he needs to do for the sake of his country, regardless of what happens to him. And so, yeah. So last week we ended in Leviticus talking about the Feast of Jubilees, which of course the blowing of the shofar trumpet. And it was from that verse in Leviticus 25 that we get this inscription on our American Liberty Bell: proclaim liberty or release during the for everyone. So there it is right there: proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. There's the inscription. So this brings us to Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. Again, so our themes are going to be Israel, the church, and the spirit of Antichrist, catching us up to modern times into Revelation. So Deuteronomy 4. Let's look at verse 30. Deuteronomy 4, verse 30 says, when you are in distress and all these things happen to you in the latter days, you will return to the Lord your God and listen to his voice. So a few things of note, courtesy of Jonathan Cahn in the Dragon's Prophecy book here on Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 30. Here's this. So he asked the question, what is the end of days? The words are as ancient as the Torah, as we see here. They are referenced right here in Deuteronomy. The very start of scripture, the first 5 books. In Hebrew, it reads the Akaret Hayamim, however that's pronounced. So when you are, another translation, when you are in distress, these things come upon you at the end of days or the latter days. When you turn, you will return or return to the Lord your God. So a couple things about this. The word for turn is that Hebrew word shuv, which we've talked about before, the big day of return, which is the Saturday between the Rosh Hashanah, New Year's Day, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement that's coming up. That is the day of return, those whole days. That's a very special Saturday, Sabbath. And in 2020, that was when they had the big event. That was the same time that Justice Coney Barrett was being presented by President Trump and setting the stage for overturning Roe v. Wade. So return is a very big deal. That shuv word there. It's a very serious, major repentance and returning, coming back, that it's referenced there. So we've got shuv for return. The word for distress there, let's see. When you are in distress, the word in Hebrew zar can also refer to an enemy or an adversary. So when you are dealing with, when you're under the stress of having to deal with an enemy or an adversary, well, we know that the spirit of Antichrist starts with Lucifer, a fallen angel, Satan himself. He is the very one who set himself up in opposition to the Lord, and to get at the Lord, he goes after the Lord's people, starting with the Jews, continuing with the church, and on from there. So they're going to be suffering at the hands of their enemy. And we're going to see that spirit played out. And so there's the stress, there's the end of days, and there's the turn, all these things together in that one verse there. So very key thoughts there. Makes sense. Everyone see that, Sister Ashley?
So the last, looking a little ahead at 31.
Yeah.
It says, for the Lord your God is a compassionate God. He will not fail you nor destroy you nor forget the covenant with you. I'm sorry, with your fathers, which he swore to them.
Right on.
So just like in, well, all the Old Testament, what we're seeing is Jerusalem veering away, right? I mean, they have veered away. I mean, but yet God has still put all these things in motion, and all these prophetic things in motion, because it's all going to culminate with them being brought back in and redeemed.
Absolutely.
Is that what
You're absolutely right.
All this stuff, right?
Yes.
All this stuff, because on the one hand, it's kind of like, man, I mean, just don't wander in the desert, just, just do it, right? Just get straight to the point. And Moses, you didn't need to hit the thing twice, just hit it once and have faith, I mean, would avoided a lot of stuff, because what I keep thinking about is I read a news article about some of the Palestinian journalists that are trying to cover the war. And I didn't get the quite timeline, but there have been like 100 Palestinian journalists that have been killed. And I was thinking about that, and it's like, normally, the press, they go into the war zone or whatever, they wear this big thing that says press, and that people know don't touch them, right? Well, they've got footage of Israeli soldiers shooting them on purpose, and that's disturbing, for whatever reason, right? For whatever the context was, for whatever reason. And so I keep thinking about innocent people in all of this. Well,
yes.
I keep thinking about, even though, the Palestinians might be using hospitals and schools as human shields, there's still people there that are dying and getting injured, and their homes are being, are being destroyed, it's, it's like the Civil War with,
Yes.
Sherman going through, and all the women and slaves were left at home on the plantations, or well, not, and all of them weren't even plantations, just were a lot of poor farmers. But yet they were considered hostile, right? Because
Supplying the enemy.
because they were supplying the enemy, right? And so their silver was stolen, or their cows were killed and they were left to starve, so that's where I kind of think about all this. It's like, why does this keep on, it just keeps perpetuating and perpetuating, and innocent people keep on hurting, when we know that there's going to be an end. God's already got the end. Why does it have to be so much suffering? And
Short answer, I'll get to Brother Peter here real quick. Short answer is people and sin. The second thought on that, and I appreciate everything you said very, very much. In war, there is, and it's to say, unfortunately, doesn't give enough weight or justice. There is sadly, devastatingly, collateral damage. Now, to the nation of Israel's credit and the hand of God, they are so skilled and so precise that if you compare any single life lost, especially an innocent life, is a huge tragedy, never to be discounted or minimized. However, on a comparative scale, when you see Israel's precision compared with other entities in other conflicts, the civilian casualty rate is so incredibly lower than it is for others, because they care enough to consider that. They care enough to take every measure they can that within reason for them to still effectively do the job and stop the threat. But still, the loss. And if anyone, not every individual, just like we had our topical Q&A, appreciate patience, Peter, I'll get right to you. I mentioned how, like with the line of Seth and the line of Cain, how just because one side was more godly than the other, that doesn't mean that individuals from each side weren't more like the opposite side. Then there could be individuals in the line of Cain that sought after God, saw the writing on the wall, said, forget you all, I'm heading over here. There could have been people in the line of Seth who, just because they were born into it, doesn't mean they were godly and they did their own self-serving thing. So too, the quote unquote good side of a war or conflict can have its bad actors in it. And so that's why we have to deal with things on an individual basis as far as that goes. Bad individuals, just like one bad cop doesn't mean all cops are bad, et cetera. But the bad cops need to be held accountable, just like bad soldiers of Israel need to be held accountable for any atrocities like that. Brother Peter.
Well, I kind of talked about that last time.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And the thing is that, so, they have all these countries here, or there's people in there, they're good people, they don't want it.
Right.
They want peace, like everybody else here, we want peace.
Yeah.
We want to see that. But we don't know what's going on in the backyard. They're digging the ground down deep somewhere, planting stuff. We don't know what they do, I'm saying this.
Sure, I got you.
But, and they don't care. They're gonna fight a war, which is they were hurt. What happened on October 7th.
Yep.
And it happened again, but they're tired. Israel's tired. It's not gonna happen anymore. So they went after these guys. They're dug in the back. These other people, innocent people, don't know that they got these tunnels down there. They're upset. Why they're bombing us? But they find out they got tunnels, and they don't hear the news like we do.
Right.
What's going on?
Absolutely. Great point, Brother Peter. Sister Peggy.
I'm an Israel soldier, and my country has been attacked by Palestinian, Lebanon, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And I see something that says Palestine or Palestinian, you're my enemy. And my goal is to take you out. Period. I'm not gonna ask questions. I'm gonna do my job. And my president said he would be annihilated. And that's what he means. And so that's how I kind of look at it. Like, there is no middle ground. Israel can't have any middle ground anymore.
Yeah.
That's been taken away. They've tried.
Mhm.
They've tried, and look what continues to happen. And now finally, like Brother Peter says,
Yep.
enough is enough. And now we are going to annihilate.
Exactly. When an organization like Hamas has said in their mission statement they want the destruction of Israel, you can't be pro-Israel and pro-Hamas. You can't be pro-peace and pro-Hamas. So Israel, like we saw the other week, Benjamin Netanyahu's announcement to the proud people, the noble people of Persia, Iran, the citizens, our problem's not with you. They have said very clearly, their problem's not with the citizens of Gaza or anywhere else. And so, but they've got a job to do. And so if I'm a resident of Gaza and I'm wearing the colors of Hamas and the flags of Hamas, which they have their own distinct stuff, then I'm identifying with those who've made a vow against Israel. So I'm, to your point, I'm aligning myself with Israel's enemy. So therefore I put myself in the spotlight in the crosshairs where there are things you can do to stay away from that. Brother Clay.
Well, you're talking about collateral damage and it's who you're dealing with those kind of people. And what those countries are barbaric, they don't care about their own humans, their own people. And then you can think back in the movie Sniper with
Tom Berenger.
That scene where the little boy sent out with a woman and he's got him in crosshairs, he's carrying the bomb. Now a decision has to be made. You let him bomb the Americans or you take the kid out.
Right.
There's no, there shouldn't, I mean, that's just the way it happens. Like,
The choice you should never have to face.
do. You know, and you never, like I say, you never know. When people look like a nice family or whatever, and then you uncover a bunch of bombs and weapons in their floor of their house. You know, you can't. I mean, you just don't go around randomly doing it,
Right.
you know. But like I say, we brought up October 7th or whatever. What happened, it's kind of fading, people's memories already, but.
It's been a year now.
How buried that was.
Yeah.
They just went in there and slaughtered people and cut them to pieces and babies and burned them.
Yep.
And then people question the right of Israel to retaliate.
Right.
And then I like where the Vance said about these protests. That those colleges allow that, they're gonna take their money away from.
Yeah.
The accreditation or whatever
Yeah.
they call it,
Yeah. Federal funding. Yeah. If you're promoting the violence. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, I listened to BB's speech to the UN, was it,
Yes.
that we heard? And the one where everybody walked out,
Yes.
and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was a phenomenal speech, and he basically said, you didn't have a problem until we started defending ourselves and fighting back. No one had a problem with us until we started taking up for ourselves. And I thought about that because you know what, that's usually how bullies are, right? Bullies are fine as long as you're just cowering and letting them bully you, but the minute you stand up to them, then
You're the aggressor.
Then you're the aggressor, right? So, and I thought about that, but then again, like I say, going back to my, I just came from the UBC convention, where we're talking about, the presentation was on, one of the Confederate homes here in California, where the UBC ladies got together and then they basically bought a house and they took care of these ailing veterans from the Civil War for years. And these were men that had nothing. They went through war, they got out of war, they had no place to go,
Came to California.
They came to California with nothing, no family, I mean, so thank goodness they had their lives, but that affected them, that good, bad, ugly, and different, it affected them. And so many of them, died there. And like I said, they were the lucky ones, the people that are going through this now, they might not have hardly any kind of resource. And that's why I brought up that verse, because it says God says right there, he's promising them, I'm going to take care of you.
Yep.
So like I say, to keep having to see Israel keep having to go through all these lessons.
Lather, rinse, repeat.
Right? It's like lather, rinse, repeat. I mean, because we're talking, and I know we're talking end times, there will be a final time, right? There will be a lather and a rinse and no repeat, right? There will be a time, but it just seems like such a heavy cost, you know?
You know how Israel is referred to as the children of God? Well, all of us who are parents, we know how it is when you only have to tell your child something once and then they get it and it's never a repeat issue. So the children of God are no different with their father than our and as we were kids too. So it's a human nature thing.
History, whenever it happens, but we are watching parts of history, play out here without a doubt. I mean, biblical history is happening in our lifetime.
There we go. So let's get some more of that in Deuteronomy. So let's read again verse 30, and as Sister Ashley added verse 31. So Deuteronomy 4, 30 and 31. When you are in distress, and this is Moses' final address to the people as the Lord is leading him. Deuteronomy 4, 30 and 31. When you are in distress and all these things happen to you, in the latter days you will return to the Lord your God and listen to his voice. For the Lord your God is a compassionate God. He will not abandon you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant with your fathers, which he swore to them. Tie this into the church real quick. We are a covenant people. Something I wanted to bring in, go ahead and go over to Deuteronomy 28. Now, as you're turning there, I want to mention Paul in the book of Romans. So Paul, Jew of all Jews, right? As he would think of himself at the time, and as he writes later. So when Paul had his conversion to the Christian faith, he didn't abandon his Jewishness. He recognized, okay, the things I had highly esteemed, I now count as rubbish, but he still was very much passionately involved with and concerned for his Jewish brother. And so why is that? Is because it is not a case of, as you've heard me say, it is not a case of replacement theology where the church has replaced Israel. God has nothing to do with Israel anymore, and it's all about the church now. Nor is it dispensationalism where God, okay, he dispensed that for Israel then. He dispenses this for... No, it's Romans 11, the olive tree. We have been grafted into something pre-existing. Just as every single one of us as a member of this church, we came to this church that was provided here by the Lord. So too, that Jesus started the church from the root of Israel. Jesus was a Jew, the whole church was Jewish, and on from there. So we are connected to something, that the whole Judeo-Christian theme here. So I say that because just as Israel, through the covenant at Mount Sinai with Moses, just as they were a covenant people to be brought into a covenant land, so we too in the church, we are a covenant people. We've made vow and contract with the Lord our God and with each other. We are going to keep each other going. We are going to be that bride making herself ready. So these patterns very much relate to us. And that brings us to Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28. Let's look at verse towards the end, 64. Yeah, Deuteronomy 28, 64, prophecy about what was to come. Furthermore, the Lord will scatter you among all the peoples from one end of the earth to the other, and there you will serve other gods made of wood and stone, which you and your fathers have not known. So Moses is telling you from the start, they're going to fall away and be taken away, and that's one of the things that's going to happen. Among those nations, you will find no peace. There will be no resting place for the sole of your foot. But there the Lord will give you a trembling heart, failing of eyes, and despair of soul. 66, so your lives will be hanging in doubt before you. You'll be terrified night and day, have no assurance of your life. Wow, that sounds pleasant. So referring to the fact that they're going to be in this state of desperation. But that's not the end of the story. If we go over to chapter 30, let's go ahead and just read the first 5 verses. Deuteronomy 30, verse 1. So it will be when all these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse, which I have placed before you, and you call them to mind in all the nations where the Lord your God has scattered you. And you return, there's that word, to the Lord your God, and obey him with all your heart and soul, in accordance with everything that I'm commanding you today, you and your sons, then the Lord your God will restore you from captivity and have compassion on you, and will gather you again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. If any of your scattered countrymen are at the ends of the earth, from there the Lord your God will gather you, and from there he will bring you back. The Lord your God will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And he will make good to you. He will be good to you and make you more numerous than your fathers. So there's the promise of provision after the time of falling away and being taken away. So we see Israel has been brought back to the land as of 1948. I appreciate the clip from Harry Truman there. And we then see that there's going to be more fulfillment in future as well as we go. So that's where we'll end for this evening with Deuteronomy, wrapping up the year 1406 BC as they're getting ready to settle in the land. Any other reactions, thoughts, comments, questions, Brother Clay?
It's sort of a group spanking. Because not, as you falling away, but can't be, it's not 100%.
Right.
Just like, small body that we have here. We're faithful, but we're going to suffer consequences of the whole.
There's some of that, but there's also grace for the individuals. Nehemiah and Daniel were great examples of those who prayed for their nation that they were suffering along with, even though they hadn't fallen away like their nation had. And so the Lord is gracious to those individuals. So the Lord, there's always that aspect too, that while things are happening on a general basis for a group, the Lord always sees the individuals. Keep in mind too, Abraham bargaining with God over Sodom and Gomorrah. What if there are 50 people who are good in all that place? Okay, if you could find me 50 good people in there, I won't destroy it. How about 40? How much? And so finally he gets them down to 10. If you can find even 10 decent people over there, I'm not going to destroy the place. Well, they couldn't. So what happened? The angels had to grab Lot and his wife and 2 daughters by the hand and yank them out because there weren't even 10 people. So sadly, oftentimes in the state of things, when things get to that point where there aren't even that many, but every individual counts that the Lord's looking at. So anything else from anyone? If not, then that's a good stopping place here. We'll go ahead and stop our share, stop recording, and let's meet in the center, get ready to close out in our season of prayer.